We all love a bit of action every now and then, right? I know I do. A good action scene is the easiest way to get me on the edge of my seat. Be it an entire city being reduced to a theatre for chaos and destruction, or a tensely quiet showdown between two characters. Do it well and I just can't get enough of it. I recently watched Arcane, which has some fantastic action sequences. To be fair, they're not the only fantastic element of the show. It looks and sounds absolutely gorgeous, and tells a compelling story with believable characters. It was so good in fact that I binged it in a single night, something that never normally happens. But even with all these great elements to admire and praise, I still ended up walking away with one thought that resounded far louder than any other. Whoa, those action scenes were so bloody brilliant. Initially, I thought this had a pretty obvious reasoning behind it. I mean, just look at them. They're literal treats for the eyes, with every frame offering up huge swaths of beauty to absorb. The medium of animation can ignore pesky things like physics and let things move however the animator desires, which the show takes masterful advantage of to ensure the visceral flow of each scene is as good as it can possibly be. On top of that, you've got a soundtrack made up of absolute bangers. Exciting, fast-paced tracks weren't just haphazardly thrown on top of video. You get the impression that significant time was spent planning how the visual and musical elements should intertwine and play off each other. This approach results in each action scene having a strong and unique identity, be it a rough and tumble bar fight set to country music or a dark showdown infused with explosive rapping. And for a short while, those two explanations satisfied me. The action scenes looked and sounded great, and that's why my brain had decided to fixate on them so much. It wasn't long though before I started to feel that there was something still going unanswered. Some piece of the puzzle I still couldn't quite grasp that would explain to me why they felt so damn brilliant. To figure out what that was, I started thinking about what an action scene really is, and then from that, what any scene in any TV show or movie really is. In the most basic, pure form, it's about storytelling. Arcane uses its first season to tell the story of Piltover and the people who call it home, and it does that over 9 separate episodes. Zooming in further, each episode is made up of a sequence of scenes. They might follow the same group of characters and naturally flow from one scene to the next, or they might have more defined start points and end points as they jump from one part of the city to another. But in both cases, you can neatly chop each episode up into its constituent scenes, just like how you can cut the entire season into separate, defined episodes. Each new episode expands and progresses the story and its characters further than the one that came before it, and that's also true down at the scene level. We don't need to wait between episodes for the story to progress. It's happening on a minute-to-minute, scene-to-scene basis. It's a bit obvious to say really, because that pacing is part of the reason the show is so compelling. But if we imagine cutting each episode into pieces like this, then we can neatly look at the action scenes as individual slices, with a slice going before it and one coming after it. And looking at it like this made me realise what it was about the action scenes that really stood out. Let's look at a sequence of 3 slices, starting with 1, a non-action scene, which is followed by 2, an action scene, and then finally 3, another non-action scene. Apply this formula to an average show or movie and scenes 1 and 3 will be made up of dialogue that moves the story along and develops the characters, and scene 2 will be filled with lots of visually exciting stuff, but not much else. When structured like this, the story effectively gets put on pause whenever an action scene starts, and is only set back to play again once the thrills have all wrapped up. The events of an action scene are still part of the story of course, and you can still learn things about the world and its characters. It's just that these exciting vignettes often don't teach us as much as their calmer cousins. A good show or movie will try its best to inform and intrigue at a similar level, but given that these are situations with a hell of a lot happening and often not much time for talking, it's not always easy to do that. But that's just what Arcane managed to pull off so exceptionally. The action scenes tell the story as much as any of the other scenes, and in some cases, they even do it better. Take the fight with Echo and Jayce on the bridge as an example. I'm assuming you've seen it, but as a brief recap, we've got 2 characters who used to be childhood friends, now facing each other with the intent to kill. We've seen them scrap a bit a couple of times already, but as far as we know, this is the first time they've really come face to face in a one-on-one showdown like this. It starts with Echo shouting and charging in. It's a move that seems driven by anger and urgency, which is pretty understandable given the situation. He then pauses and sets out a challenge. They'll settle this following the same rules they used when playfighting as children. Stopping like this shows us that while dire situations might provoke him to act emotionally, he's also able to regain control and carefully plan out his actions at a moment's notice. We then see a sort of flashback to how the two play fought as children, overlaid with images of their fight in the present, with the implication that this nostalgic memory is being experienced by both characters. It's nice, and at a basic level it shows us that they both acknowledge their shared history, but it's in how they interpret this memory that teaches us so much more about them. When Echo sets out this challenge, Jayce treats it as a bit of a joke, completely in line with the rest of her behaviour that we've seen so far. But Echo is treating it far more logically and far more tactically. He remembers exactly how these fights used to play out, and is attempting to trick Jayce into following those same patterns so that he can anticipate her attacks and gain a combat advantage. When we see this plan executed, there's no fun or reminiscence on his end. The trick works perfectly, and he's able to quickly close the distance and lay down a beating. So we learn that despite the complicated and difficult history these two have, Echo's able to strip away all the joy and happiness these memories must once have had, turning them into a utilitarian tool to give him the edge in a fight. It speaks to his combat skills, but also teaches us about how he sees Jayce. While somebody like Vi sees a lost soul who might have some chance at redemption, Echo's able to reduce the person standing before him to nothing more than a threat. It's a danger to him and those he cares about, and should therefore be incapacitated as quickly as possible by any means necessary. Jayce, on the other hand, seems almost confused at the turn of events, and it's that reaction that shatters the assumption that Echo based his approach on. His plan is upended as he seems to recognise for the first time in years that he once knew this enemy of his. It's such a shock that he's completely paralysed by it. He's either not felt this before or has never allowed himself to feel it. A defining moment in how this character sees another, communicated in a matter of seconds. Jayce's response is to set off a bomb in an attempt to kill them both, but there's even something to learn in the way these brief frames play out. There's no maniacal laughing or revelling at having tricked Echo into hesitating, a reaction that would have been completely unsurprising given some of her other antics. She instead seems completely unfeeling and numb. Seeing Echo successfully exploit their childhood memories to beat her seems to have shocked her to her very core. Throughout the series, we see her struggle with the person she's become, and there are times where she seems to come close to attempting some kind of change. But if somebody who was once a close friend doesn't see that potential at all, and is even able to completely detach emotion from the memories of that person to trick her into an easy defeat, then what hope really is there? Again, it's a hugely defining moment, achieved within a few frames. So in the space of about 3 minutes, we learn what these characters think of each other, how they approach situations, and then get to see their relationship evolve as each learns something that fundamentally alters how they see the other. So much storytelling has been done, and it's happened in an action scene without the two even speaking. And I've not even mentioned everything the scene has to offer in this department. There's thematic symbolism in the firefly and the crow that back each character, and foreshadowing for a story thread that's presumably going to be explored in later seasons. It's really insane just how much was pulled off so well in such a short action sequence. Let's look at the scene where Vi and Jayce fight a bunch of guys too. On the surface, this seems like one of those more standard action scenes, where you see a bunch of cool shit and can revel in some bad guys getting a beating. It's good fun without much thinking required. And then... What was just seconds ago a celebration of the excitement we can get from violence is shattered completely, with all the seemingly mindless action transformed into context with which we can learn more about Jayce. He was ready to dish out destruction without really contemplating the consequences, and even seemed to enjoy having finally been given the opportunity to exact some punishment on those who'd been untouchable for so long. There's a recklessness to his approach, and while he certainly feels bad about it afterwards, we can see that he's not able to control his emotions in a fight as well as someone like Echo. You can analyse all the action scenes like this, and they all take this approach. They want to excite and thrill you, but they also want to prompt you to connect with their participants. The action scenes are scenes like any other, and that is the secret ingredient that makes them so damn special. The plot isn't put on pause while they happen, it never stops. and by the time they finish, you'll probably need quite some time to fully process and contextualize everything you've just absorbed. It's at once a basic observation for how an action scene should play out, but the fact that it's achieved so rarely also makes it worthy of praise. I hope others take note. There's a lot to learn here because they not only achieved that goal, but exceeded it with style, flourish, and finesse. So if you already figured that out for yourself, well, you're probably not watching right now. But otherwise, I hope this video has helped you appreciate the series a bit more than you did before. I've been Tom, and thank you for watching.